and welcome. Thank you for being here. Super special thank you to Dr. Anthony James, who has offered his time to be with us here and meet you.
What do you have that signed as Willow?
Alex and I feel really excited for this opportunity to introduce our teacher, Dr. James, to you, our community. So yeah, we want to use, like Dr. J, you just said, we want to use every minute we have, answer as many questions as we can get to. So we're just going to hop right in. I'm going to just introduce you, Dr. J. We call Dr. James Dr. J. It might be difficult for me to call him Dr. James. It feels very formal. But he is, like I said, Alex and I's teacher. He's the founder and the director of the Somaveda College of Natural Medicine and the Thai Yoga Center, where we've been trained as Thai yoga instructors and Ayurvedic practitioners. He is a physician, a traditional naturopathic doctor, a registered Ayurveda doctor, a doctor of Oriental medicine and acupuncture, and a recognized medicine man in the Native American Indigenous Church. So again, we are so excited and incredibly grateful for the opportunity to chat with him and for his time to chat with you. And let me just check again, our waiting room. Good. Alex, do you want to maybe cover a few of the logistical details?
Yes, can you mute?
Who is that? Where's that coming from? Oh, here.
J9WTC.
Yeah, quite a name. We've got a robot here in the chat room with us.
Hi, welcome. Thank you. So it's really nice to see all of you here. We're really excited just to kind of bounce off of what Maddie was saying. Some of the technical ways we'll run this is after Dr. J introduces himself and shares what he wants to share. The way that we will manage Q&A is we'll have you go into the participant tab at the bottom of your screen and raise your hand, like virtually. You're not going to literally raise your hand, but you'll press the raise your hand button, and then Maddie or I will call on you and you can unmute yourself and ask your question. And then we'll go from there. Does that sound easy enough? Cool. We're all game? Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
And if for some reason you can't find that feature, like if you're on a phone or something like that and you're just having trouble raising your hand, you can write your question in the chat and we'll get to you that way. Or you can just say, hey, I have a question. Yeah, just reach out, let us know. Okay, Dr. J, let's see. I have unmuted you.
Thank you, Maddie. Well, first of all, let me just say welcome to everybody, everyone I know and everyone I don't know. And for those of you who are new to me and actually maybe have little or no clue as to who I am, which would in some ways probably be expected. I'm Dr. Anthony James. I'm the Dean of Education and the Director of Medicine for the NAIC Somaveda College of Natural Medicine. I'm the founder and chief instructor of the Thai Yoga Center. I am a practicing physician. I have an MD. I have 5 other doctorates in Oriental medicine, naturopathy, indigenous medicine, monastic medicine. I have master's degrees in clinical herbology and about 75 other professional certificates as at the teacher level or above. I'm also an original first generation, well actually let's say second generation Lee Jun Fan or Bruce Lee Jeet Kune Do teacher. I'm a 5th degree black belt. 5th degree black belt in karate. I've been practicing martial arts for 45, almost, 50 years. And I'm a gold sash Achan in the Putaisawan tradition of Thai martial arts and Thai medical arts. I'm also a licensed physician in Thailand in Thai traditional medicine with a lifetime license, lifetime. I've also received awards from the national government of Thailand for traditional Thai Ayurveda, personally handed to me by the Prime Minister of Thailand and others, several times actually. And I'm also an Achan or professor of Thai traditional medicine in the Wat Po Association of Thai Traditional Medical Schools, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. So I get to have an opinion on what's going on. I mean, everybody gets to have an opinion. Everyone's opinion is valid. Everyone's opinion and the state of their life and the state of the world and what they're experiencing, their experience is valid. Their opinion is valid. But I'm part of a medical community that has been engaged in a review process of what's going on in the world with this corona situation, I'm going to call it. I could call it other things, but I'm going to say that for now. And more than one different medical association, both conventional and what we would call naturopathic or alternative medicine communities, communicating with scientists and doctors in multiple countries. I personally have been on the phone and video conference like this Zoom with doctors in 4 countries in the last month alone, who operate hospitals who are treating corona from day one. And they have their opinion. And I'm up to date. Let's say medically, scientifically, I'm up to date as much as anybody is. So the reason I decided to be available for this today is because you might see a lot of stuff on YouTube or on Facebook or on CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, Fox News, and Spectrum News, and all of these different things, which all seem to sound pretty much the same. And yet, at the same time, you might wonder, why is there so much confusion? Why is there any confusion? And I don't know if I can clear it up for you, but I might be able to. But more than that, my interest is, I'm a practitioner, I'm a teacher of medicine and therapy. And if there ever was a time in the whole history of the world to this minute where educated people needed to practice medicine with confidence, it's right now. Now is that time. So, you know, I don't necessarily want to just share a bunch of different points of views on things, but based on your interest, and if you have some questions, that'd be super helpful because you're the ones here. So my way of being as a teacher is always, I teach to the people who are in the class. You know, and so that's why every class is different, is because every class has different people. So if you guys can, you know, speak up, have some interest, I don't care what it is. You know, if it's, as long as I want to keep it generally about this issue of the environment of corona that we're all in right now. If you have medical questions, I'm happy to answer those. Generally, I can't give you a personal prescription without an assessment or evaluation. I'm a medical professional. That's how we do it. We do assessments, then we make recommendations. But generally, I can answer your questions. I can talk about things like social distancing. I can talk about things like rate of infection, risk of infection, mask, what's safe, what's not safe, who's safe, who's not safe, who's at risk, who's not at risk, why, value of different medical procedures you might have heard of or that you're concerned with directly for yourself or for your family, for your clients or for your friends. And try not to do it. I'm going to try to be as anti-hyperbolic as I can, because a lot of physicians like myself right now, the biggest issue that we have, and I'm teaching physicians how to tap on their issues that are of anger and dealing with stupidity and confusion, which in some respects looks to be intentional. And so as a physician, I walk around in a semi-state of madness because of the ignorance and confusion that I see being perpetuated in the media, which is completely unnecessary and which is a fear tactic. And I personally believe that any medicine that's based on coercion and fear as the primary tools for the distribution and the administration of that medicine is in fact not definable as medicine. It's something else. We got to use another word for it, even though it's being called medicine. But if the primary tool to involve people, engage people, and to have compliance with what's good for them versus what's bad for them is terror, then in my opinion, that's not medicine. And there's actually quite a long history of discussion about the topics of coercive medicine and the role of coercion and institutional or corporate or profit-centered medicine. And this is, of course, the antithesis of natural medicine. It's the antithesis of sacred medicine. It's the antithesis of Native American medicine. It's the antithesis of Ayurveda. It's the antithesis of traditional Chinese medicine. It's the antithesis of Unani medicine, shamanism, and any other kind of medicine that you could think of that is what we would call traditionally based in an ethical or moral practice. Coercion, fear, and violence have never been part of those systems. Never. And those systems have lasted thousands of years. So we have a Western medical system that right now seems to be driven by fear and coercion and threats of violence, and a lot of justification for that. And it's not sustainable. What that's going to look like in the future, I don't know. But I have some prognostications. I have some suspicion of what we're going to be dealing with here in the next year, next 2 years, next 5 years. But that's enough from me right now. Just if you guys can throw out a question or
looks like we
something
have
you'd like me to.
a couple of questions coming through the chat. The first one is from Rachel and says, what's with the changing list of symptoms for COVID-19?
And I'm gonna make a little list of your questions. Maddie and Alex both can tell you that sometimes, because I tend to think of things in layers, that it's easy for me to go off on a tangent because I practice this philosophical concept of everything's related. So the second Rachel asked the question, what's up with the changing list of symptoms? I now have like 5 conversations going on in my head. Okay. But let me try and just bring it to one voice and one. Now also, and this, let's call this a disclaimer. Okay. Yes, I'm educated, and yes, I am actively involved. Clinically, I'm actively involved. I'm consulting with people. Actually, and not just even in the US, I'm consulting with people in several other countries about what, as practitioners, doctors, and therapists, they should be doing right now to get through and to get their community through what's going on. I'm on that list of people who are doing that. But however I do it, it's still my opinion. It may be an educated opinion, and it may reflect out of some organizations or like the American Naturopathic Medical Association or SMOC or whatever. It may reflect points of view, but of course, it's my opinion. So with that said, no matter what I say, trust, but also always verify, and never take an expert's opinion altogether for anything. I don't care if it's me, I don't care who it is. Do whatever you have to do to come up with your own sort of system or way of being of external validation. And this is so true right now when everybody is being told to shut up and do as you're told and believe what we tell you. Don't second guess, don't look for other opinions, believe what we tell you. And I want to say there's a humongous problem with that. All right, so back to Rachel's question. See, I already went off. Rachel asked the question, I'm already gone, you know. Changing list of symptoms. All right, so I'm going to say some things. Maybe you're not going to like me. You're not going to like what I have to say, but I'm just going to tell you straight out what I think about it. Number one, the reason there's a changing list of symptoms is because although I do believe that coronavirus, SARS-2, COVID-19, seventh reiteration of the coronavirus that we've diagnosed since 1984 is a real thing. However, even as of yesterday afternoon, a scientific report was published that has been in development for the last 6 weeks, where a subgroup of a European medical think tank declared that corona is not a respiratory illness. That it is not. It is not a respiratory illness. That it is an inflammatory illness that causes pressure in the lungs, which throw off blood clots, which then raid the other organs, and specifically the liver and the kidneys. And the organ failure and collapse, the cytokine storm, quote unquote, and all these other types of symptoms are actually a result of what happens when you have actually a blood clotting disorder, which is in an environment that is already compromised. Okay, and so that accounts for all the different lists of symptoms. So let me give you another idea that maybe help make it a little more clear for you. The reason there's different lists of symptoms is because of the underlying health issues that quote unquote corona patients are suffering from. So if you are diabetic and you have corona, you have one set of symptoms. And that will be different from if you are hypertensive heart disease and you have corona. That'll be different symptoms. If you are a kidney dialysis patient and you have corona, you will have a different set of symptoms. If you have MS, if you have Parkinson's, if you have any other infection, like say a pneumonia, you will have one set of infection, one set of symptoms. You will present differently than if you have, for example, MRSA, sepsis, or system-wide infection, which is a result of something completely unrelated, you know, because sepsis can be post-surgical. MRSA could be because you jabbed yourself with a rusty nail while you were walking through the barn. It could be food poisoning. If you have food poisoning, okay? Salmonella, E. coli, which can kill you. If you have Salmonella, E. coli, severe, and you also then have COVID, you will have a different set of symptoms. Do you follow me? Rachel, is that clear? So anyone who says there's like the list of symptoms, see, already we're inaccurate. Okay. Oh, dry cough and fever. Dry cough and fever. Maybe loss of taste. Okay. How many people here have ever had a migraine? All right. Have you ever noticed that when you have a migraine that your eyes turn red? Have you ever noticed when you have a migraine that you lose taste? In fact, food is absolutely tasteless. When you have a migraine, food is absolutely tasteless. Okay, so for example, migraines are not an on-off situation. They're actually expressed clinically as a continuum of symptoms. And some of these symptoms, for example, begin days and days and days before you actually have a headache. And some of those symptoms of early onset migraine have to do with the eyes, have to do with the sense of taste, have to do with other factors, let's say it that way, okay? So if you're prone to migraines and you have corona, you're gonna have a different set of symptoms, okay? And consider that 99 point, what is it now, the most current estimate is 99% of people who have corona, COVID, SARS-2, COVID-19, just to be accurate, okay, because that's what we're talking about, have no symptoms and don't know that they've been infected or that they went through the whole disease course without any noticeable, identifiable symptoms that something was wrong with them. That the vast majority of people feel fatigue for a day or two. That's their symptom. They feel fatigue for a day or two. But how many people do you know who have fatigue all the time? Chronic fatigue is an epidemic. So if you're a chronic fatigue person, you would never know. You would think that maybe you're a little more tired than usual. That would be your symptom. And how do you rate that? I mean, do you keep a diary every day on a scale of 1 to 10? How fatigued am I today? How chronically fatigued am I today? Oh, normally I'm only a 6 or 7, but the last couple of days I've been a 7.5 or an 8 on my fatigue scale. Does that mean I'm suffering from corona? It might. Okay, but symptoms, oh my God. So from a clinical point of view, as a medical doctor, guess what? I can't look at you and tell if you have corona. Nobody can. It's not possible. So anybody who's talking about sending out volunteers in the community to survey people to see if they have symptoms of corona, that is a nightmare. Because let me give you some other things that look like corona symptoms. How about a raging candidiasis or candida infection? How about that? That can cause respiratory problems. That can cause symptoms of allergies. And let's go into that. It's springtime. It's summertime. We live in the trees here. You guys know that. We live in the trees. We're like hobbit people. We live in the forest. Forest of oak trees. Right now, there is oak pollen everywhere. If I go out on my car right now and I just went like this across the hood, my finger would be green. Of course, we're breathing that, right? So we're in a little bit of state of irritation, but you know what? It's not bad. It's not a bad thing. Why? Because as those allergens irritate my immune system changes my RNA and changes my DNA profile forever to be more in harmony with the allergy environment that I happen to live in. And so instead of causing me harm, even though it might cause me to have a sniffle or a sneeze or a little congestion, upper respiratory, even though it might cause me to have a little fatigue, because when you're under allergies, you feel a little more tired. The result of that in my body is that my RNA and my DNA adapt to the current stress of the infectious allergens forever, and it lasts the rest of my life. Now, it doesn't mean that next year I won't have symptoms of allergies, okay? But the way that they affect me will be subtly different. And worse, and more than that, if I was engaged in making babies right now, which I'm not, okay? But if I was, that adapted genetic profile, the adaptogenic response to the environmental allergens as it relates to my immune system will be passed on to my children and to my children's children. So like Native Americans, we say 7 generations. And some people think that's just a thing that Native Americans say. But actually, from an immunology point of view, it's actually a fact. Immune factors are passed from generation to generation for multiple generations, and the stronger you are and the more resistant and adaptive, in other words, the wider variety of irritants you're exposed to, the more functional your immune system is, and so will be more functional the immune system of all of your children and your grandchildren. All right, so what else? So I hope I kind of beat the list of symptoms to death, but if you have any other questions, let me know.
There's another question, the next one. Susan, would you like to ask your question out loud? I can unmute you here. There you go.
I think we can just read it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me pull it up. Susan asked, do you feel fear, hopelessness, and mindsets in the political arena in our world play into pandemics?
Say it again.
Do you feel that fear, hopelessness, and mindsets in the political arena in our world play into pandemics?
In my medical community, we believe, and we're discussing this every day, that the pandemic is not a virus. The pandemic is fear. What has shut the world down? What is costing millions and millions and millions of people their jobs and their livelihoods and their freedoms to express their life as independent people in the world is not the virus, is not a virus. In fact, it is fear. So, and also fear is, back to what I said earlier, that this idea of medicine, which is non-consensual, this idea of medicine that is applied using military style tools, up to and including threats of violence with men with guns, is in fact not the practice of medicine. So it is a socio-political event. It is not a health crisis. The health crisis, and again, and so you don't misunderstand me, SARS-2, COVID-19, 8th iteration of the original first documented coronavirus found in 1984 is a real thing, okay? We also believe that it's man-made because it has genetic material that does not occur in nature, does not naturally occur in nature. And one of the top 10 world's microbiologists came out of the closet this week. Her name is Dr. Cahill. You can look her up, Dr. Cahill. And she came out and she said that her lab had sequenced the COVID virus, and that they found a section of the DNA in the virus which was clearly man-made. That for a mutation similar, this adaptive mutation to occur naturally in the virus in nature, would it take more than 500 years? More than 500 years for this degree of mutation from the SARS-1, which was 2017, to SARS-2, which is 2020. So in 2 years, we see a mutation that naturally could only have occurred in nature over a period of 500 years, randomly, if it was going to occur. We now see this as a concrete, succinct string of altered genetic material in the virus in 2 years. So the only way scientifically possible that that could occur is if the virus is man-made. Now, the genetic mutation does not make it more dangerous. In other words, it doesn't make it more deadly. It doesn't make it more dangerous. And it doesn't make it, what it makes it is easier to communicate between humans, between one person and another, so that the mutation, the adaptogenic mutation of the DNA, which is laboratory made, that what it specifically does is it increases the transferability of the virus between humans. It does not make it more severe. It doesn't make it more violent. If this was a bioweapon, it's a total failure because the survival rate is 99% plus a percentage. So as a bioweapon, a lot of people say conspiracy theory, oh, it's a bioweapon. It was engineered in a military lab and got loose in China and all. Well, if that's actually true, those bioweapon designers are just abysmally poor designers, because you would think they would have designed a virus that would be more deadly, okay? Like SARS-2. SARS-1 is more deadly. H1N1 is more deadly. Influenza B is more deadly than COVID. So if they were designing it to be deadly, they're abysmal failure. However, they're completely successful if what they were looking for was a rapidly expanding communicable disease with mild symptoms that would be masked or complicated by other underlying factors that could then be used as a socio-political tool to literally within a couple of months take over the world, then they were successful. I'm sorry if that sounds a little too conspiracy-like, but that's the science. Dr. Cahill, don't take my word for it, one of the world's top 10 microbiologists, virologists, a woman who has got a list of credentials scientifically, Dolores Cahill. She's actually Irish. She's out of Ireland, okay? She's not American. She's not US. She's not Western. She's Irish, okay? Her list of credentials is longer than my arm, literally. And she is one of the doctors who set up one of the very first stage 4 viral research containment facilities. She literally patented the technology used to scientifically investigate the most dangerous viruses known to exist in the world. She is the actual researcher who first located and identified, for example, the Asian bird flu or the H1N1 virus for the World Health Organization. She's actually the virologist, microbiologist whose lab actually did that work. And she built the lab where that research was done. She's not a hack. And according to her, the virus is man-made, obviously. It didn't come out of her lab, but she said it came out of one like it. Didn't come out of hers, but had to come out of one like it. Number 2, it's really not that bad. Okay, and what makes it bad, and we could come back to this over and over again, learn this word. You need to know this word, comorbidity. Comorbidity and its little sister, premorbidity. Premorbidity and comorbidity. And that's what that is. So fear. Yeah, fear is the number one driving force in the pandemic and the political machinations of what governments are doing to quote unquote solve the corona equation. Fear is what lockdowns are about. Fear is what social distancing is about. Fear is what everybody needs to wear a mask is about. Because scientifically, those ideas are unsupported. And actually, they've already been widely discredited. But a lot of politicians are escalating compliance, or escalating militarism, they're escalating enforcement. House Bill, write this down, House Bill 6666. Great number, huh? House Bill 6666. Mark of the beast. Not my idea. Okay, House Bill 6666 will call for the mandatory testing and removal from private homes of people who volunteers feel have symptoms of corona. Now, the volunteers will be escorted by men with guns. And the reason why is because when they knock on your door and come to your house and tell you that they are there to do mandatory testing, if you don't open the door, then they can kick the door open. If you don't want to let them in, well, they can come in with the force of a warrant. And if you don't want the test, they can hold you down and test you. And if you don't take the test, but they visually think you have symptoms, and I already described to you how symptoms are unreliable, they can take you out of your house or remove your children from your house or remove other family members from your house and take you to a quarantine site where you'll be held for a minimum of 14 days against your will. That is now on the floor. I'm not going to go into all the congressmen and women who support it. It is likely to pass unless there's enough of a groundswell of people saying no to their congressmen and women, to the representatives, saying we do not want coercive force testing and removal of symptomatic persons from private homes. And they're going to use the National Guard. The bill states that the local police will be supplemented with National Guard in all 50 states in order to make this happen. And it's going to be a mess, okay? So fear, what is that about? That's fear, my friend. And even to propose such things is, again, to ramp up or escalate the fear tactic. Do you understand? Again, threats of violence equal fear. Compliance or violence is an age-old tactic used by tyrannical despots, I won't mention any names, to generate compliance in populations for socio-political agendas. And of course, as a Native American, don't get me started on how fear and threats of violence was used to disenfranchise American Indian natives from their lands and their religious practices and their traditional medicine and their cohesive family identities and tribal identities and so on and so forth. It's an age-old tactic. There's nothing new about it. It works, is why it's being used today. Okay, what else?
Dr. J, there are a few questions that I think you might be able to sort of answer under one umbrella.
Okay.
They're kind of broadly about supplements and immune support. Willow asked about homeopathic. I actually don't know how to pronounce
Yeah.
that word, homeopathic nosode. She said,
Yeah, no, sir.
yeah,
Okay.
how do you feel about that? And then there's a second question from Emily. Have heard multiple things about elderberry syrup. Is there anything known about it in helping the immune system? I've heard it makes COVID worse, but is that only after you've had it? And then the last question in this group is from Becca, and it's really just broadly about what are some best practices to support our own immune systems?
Awesome questions. I'll take them in order. Okay. So when we start talking about supplements and specific supplements, there's a pro and a con to it. Okay. The pro is, can supplements be helpful? And also, I want to be clear, who are we talking about? Are we talking about you with corona? You trying to prevent having corona? You have corona. You're recovering from corona. In other words, there's 4 states. There's, I haven't caught it yet, and I don't have it, and I don't want to get it. There, I have it, but I don't want it to get worse. I have it, it's really bad. What do? I survived it and recovered, and now what do I do? Can I get it again even? Okay, because that's a question people are asking. So it's like 4 states. And so when we talk about supplements, the supplements that might be maximally appropriate will change according to those 4 things. So that's why there'll be no just one generic, this is the supplement to take, okay? And also, I want to say this, herbal supplements and things like elderberry, okay? Yes, they are herbs, and we refer to them as herbal medicines. Specifically, she said elderberry syrup, okay? So what is a syrup? It's a tincture or extraction or infusion of elderberry constituents, which is then mixed with syrup. And a syrup can be lots of things, but usually it's like honey or something made with sugar, like a cough syrup or what have you. But the constituent being the elderberry. Even there's elderberry syrups, which are just like a jam, in other words, where you just reduce the elderberries into, beyond a juice, into a thick jam-like substance, which is beautiful, by the way. It's actually a real thing. But elderberry is antiviral, antifungal, antibacterial, anti-inflammatory. And so is elderberry good? Well, if anything that you're dealing with has inflammation, if anything that you're dealing with has edema, if anything that you're dealing with has fever, if anything that you're, do you follow me? If anything that you're dealing with has a respiratory effect, even allergy, then yeah, it would be good. But what I want to say though is, let's take elderberry as the poster child for all herbal remedies, single note or complex remedies, and let's recategorize them into food. Okay? Native Americans use elderberries as food. Native Americans use elderberries as medicine, a little bit stronger food that cures. So when we say medicine, we're talking about food that is good for a specific illness. It's still food. If I make elderberry jam and I put it on my bagel, it will have the same medicinal effect as if I take elderberry jam and take a spoonful of it because I have a respiratory problem and I think I have a virus and a fever. So it's a delivery system. You want to take your elderberry in a tincture? I want to spread it on a bagel. But the difference is, in effect, is actually not much difference at all, because basically it's a food. So all herbal medicines are foods, all of them. All herbal medicines are foods. And most herbal medicines are also other things. So like elderberry is used to dye fabric. It's used, yeah, trust me, you eat a bunch of elderberries and maybe, no, don't trust me. You're probably much neater than I am. But if I was eating a bunch of elderberries, about 30% of them would be on the front of this shirt, right here, according to Julie. And so that shirt then would be speckled with elderberry forever. Okay, so Native Americans discovered this a long time ago, and they said, you know what? Rather than eat elderberries in my good shirt and have it speckled with spots of elderberry, how about I just mash up the elderberries, take my shirt, and just squash it into the elderberries until it's completely purple. And now I have a nice blue shirt, and I can eat all the elderberries I want without having to be socially unacceptable as a slob. Okay? Most herbal medicines have multiple functions. It's not just one function. And also they work together as communities, just like plants naturally occur in communities of related plants, synergistically and sympathetically, okay? So for example, there are people in what we call permaculture, or people who've studied Rudolf Steiner and others, who have studied the Asian way of gardening, which is that you do not do monoculture. There's no such thing as monoculture in traditional Asian farming. And so all the naturally occurring plants that would naturally be with the plant you're trying to cultivate, those plants are cultivated too. Because in nature, they work together to strengthen each other and to protect each other. And so when we take food, and we have variety of food, both herbal type of food, vegetable type of food, all the different categories of types of foods, but we put them all together and we rotate them through our diet, they actually work synergistically and they create an effect that's much greater than any of them. So the simple answer is elderberry is amazingly good for viral. It's great for flu. It's great for cold. It's great for fever, but it's also good for allergies. It's a homeopathic principle. Elderberry pollen will give you allergy symptoms. Okay? Elderberries grow here. Like we have elderberry growing wild in our yard here. When it blooms, it produces a pollen. That pollen is allergenic, and it will cause you to have an allergenic response. If I take the elderberries and I make a homeopathic tincture from them and give that to you, that's a cure for the allergy that the elderberry is causing. And so quite often the food, an element of the food is the cure for what the irritation the food is that causes it. Like poison ivy, you have poison ivy, I make a tincture from poison ivy and I give you that as an antidote for poison ivy. And it works really well. Homeopathics, contrary to what you might have heard, are still the #1 most commonly used natural medicine in the world today, medically and clinically. #1 is homeopathy. In the US, no. Why? Because 1, it's cheap. #2, with a little bit of training, I can teach you how to make homeopathic remedies. A little bit of training, you can make homeopathic remedies. They're cheap and they cannot be controlled by third parties, your access to them. And they're proven effective. And they've been institutional medicine in most of Europe, all of India, including Southeast Asia and China. Yes, Chinese medicine, they use homeopathy. And they've been using homeopathy from day one in their corona treatments in China. So homeopathy is good. Homeopathic no-sodes and supplements. Well, homeopathic pharmacopoeia is exhaustive. And Hahnemann's Organon, there's over 40,000 different homeopathic remedies that are listed. And they're listed by symptom. But right now, there's some really good homeopathic libraries that you can access online, where you can plug in your symptoms and they'll tell you the top 10 homeopathic remedies for your symptoms. And what you do is you type in all of your symptoms, not just one symptom. Don't type corona, because I already told you, corona has many different symptoms depending on what your underlying issues are. Best practices. All right, right now, clinically, as of yesterday, the clinics that are reporting no fatalities in their corona treatments are using a cocktail, vitamin D, vitamin C, okay, and zinc. And I've been telling people in my classes, well, forever, that the best way to build your immune system as a basic cocktail of supplements is vitamin D, vitamin C, and zinc. And you want the best bioavailable version of those things that you can lay hands on. But honestly, straight out ascorbic acid is better than nothing. It's dirt cheap, okay? Bowel tolerance, diarrhea issues are less with liposomal vitamin C or ester C or esterized C, such as what you find in Emergen-C or other similar products. However, what's the dosage for an average person who's well, not sick, prophylactic, just to protect? How about this? I take 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C every day just because there's air pollution. That's it, just because there's air pollution. And I get exposed to particulate emissions from a highway that's 5 miles away. I take 1,000 milligrams a day. If I suspected that something was going around, okay, I would go to 2, 3, or 4,000 milligrams. If I suspected that I had symptoms of corona, I would go to 10,000 milligrams a day or more, up to 60,000 milligrams. But if you're going to do that high a dose of vitamin C, it's got to be the liposomal vitamin C, or you're going to have explosive diarrhea. You're going to hit bowel tolerance before you get to the enough saturation to help your corona. All right, vitamin D, 5,000 units per day. That's what the clinics are using. I got a report from our clinic, the Jade Center for Integrative Medicine in Ibarra, Ecuador, yesterday, that they had treated 30 patients with corona using high doses of D, C, and zinc, and had 100%, and with some adjuncts like oxygen therapy, far infrared therapy, PEMF, and homeopathy. But the primary basis of their treatment was a cocktail of vitamin D, C, and zinc. It's the primary thing. Yesterday, they had 30 patients diagnosed severe corona, fully and completely and totally recovered, had 0 mortality. And I know many clinics that have had hundreds or even thousands of patients now who've had no one die, who even though they had the diabetes, even though they had the cancer, even though they had the kidney disease, because these are essential nutrients or essential vitamins, and they in and of themselves will cause no complication. Homeopathy, you can dose yourself till you're blue in the face with any homeopathic medicine that you think will be helpful, and it will not cause you to have one adverse effect. So I have no fear about that whatsoever. Best practice, stay healthy. If you don't know what that means for you, then you need to find a practitioner and you need to get enrolled in their program, get an assessment, and get to it. If you have diabetes, for example, if you have type 2 diabetes for more than 60 or 90 days, let's say 6 years or 9 years or 20 years, that's on you. Because if you changed your diet today and you went to primarily a plant-based diet with appropriate supplements for your body type and for your weight and so on and so forth, you could be diabetes free in 60 to 90 days. So if diabetes is the #1 complication in mortality of hospitalized COVID patients, then if you're sitting here right now and you have diabetes, then that's your wake-up call. don't worry about COVID, worry about your diabetes. That's what causes the comorbidity that will lead you to be on a respirator. And it's the high number of people on the respirators that are passing away. And that's a whole nother thing. Medically, respirators are not appropriate for treating COVID patients. So all this hysteria over respirators, not enough respirators. Let's get everybody on a respirator. It's really sad. It's so medically uninformed that it's actually really sad. Respirators force you to breathe against your natural rhythm. All right, just imagine that. Respirator forces you to breathe mechanically against your natural biorhythm of respiration, inhalation, exhalation. The body responds to that as a violent incursion, and immediately it begins to cause damage in the lungs. And this damage releases microscopic blood clots, which attract proteins, which cause a flooding of inflammation and water and fluid, and then trigger a critical stress response, which is called a cytokine storm. And that's what people die from on the respirators. And that's now been proven, validated, researched. We're already on the other side of that. So any medical authorities who are still recommending respirators for corona patients, I don't know what they're doing. This is one reason why some doctors, emergency doctors, have been committing suicide, is because they found out that the primary medicine they're being ordered to practice is actually killing people. And they went into medicine to be healers and to help people, even in allopathy. They're genuinely good people. That's why they went into it. And they got out of it because they have found out, because they're searching for answers just like you are. And they realized after studying the science that what they were doing to patients was actually killing them. And for what? No medical necessity, certainly, but for profit, for money, for the institutions, and to get the numbers up and that kind of thing, which is not the practice of medicine. That's socio-political strategy. And when doctors find out that their recommended medical procedures directly are causing mortality, the good ones have a crisis of conscience. And this is why there are doctors who are committing suicide. Some you may be hearing of, some not, because of course the medical establishment does not want you to know about the physicians who are quitting their practice, giving up their licenses, and or even committing suicide as they are finding out what they're going through. The PR is that they're so stressed from the trauma of helping people. Okay? I've been stressed with the trauma of helping people, even critically, for more than 30 years. Not one time ever, not for 1 second, did it ever cause me to have a thought about killing myself. All right, go ahead.
Okay. So there, I'm going to also try to lump together one last question from a few people. Since it is 2 o'clock, is it okay? Do you have time to answer one more question, Dr.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
And I got a reference idea that I want to say before we go too.
Okay.
So go ahead.
Okay. So let's see. It started with Vina. I'm going to travel up to the question. It's here somewhere. Vina. And then a couple others beneath her, I think Liz and Rachel, they all kind of asked, or at least agreed, that they wanted to hear more about this. Vina says, I'm worried about eventually having to take federally mandated coronavirus vaccines. How should we handle that moving forward?
Like Nancy Reagan's drug strategy, just say no. I know it didn't work for addiction, and maybe it won't work for this, but here's the thing. Believe it or not, there's still a Constitution in the United States. Believe it or not, the government of the United States still operates according to rights and responsibilities, which are delegated through this document we call the Constitution and also the Bill of Rights. And those are still law everywhere in the United States. So you have certain rights. You have rights to personal sovereignty, free speech, right of association, right of religious expression, so on and so forth. And those are not because of pandemic. That technically they're more valuable now than they ever were. And so back to this idea of coercive medicine. So you have to keep track of your what's called sovereignty. And I almost hate to use the word because there's a lot of abuse of that term. People want to drive on a road without a driver's license and they call them sovereign citizens. And that's not a real thing. It doesn't work. But you do actually have verifiable rights as a US citizen. So you can say no. And you can notify authorities that you do not intend to comply with any coercive medical procedures that are against your common interest without your consent. See, there are laws in all 50 states that require medical consent for procedures. And those laws haven't been set aside. They're still actually in force. People don't know that, so they don't exercise the fact. Just like you go to a hospital and they say, oh, we're gonna have to amputate your foot. You could go, hey, well, could we just wait a minute? Do you mean like amputate? You mean like take my foot off now? And they're like, yeah, we're gonna do it now. We're gonna run over here and chop your foot off. And you could actually go, hey, I'm not saying no, because maybe you have a good reason to want to chop my foot off. But don't I have a right of a second opinion? Can I think about it? Do I have to give consent right this second without having any second thought of my own about my own health and my own future? Because it's going to change my life forever, right? So don't I have that right? And yes, you do. And that hasn't changed because of what's going on. So hold on to that thought. Okay. The other thing is, and I'm going to put this out here when it comes to vaccines and so on. There's a movement, of course, to try and remove your ability to say no to a forced vaccination. However, there are big problems with that. And the first one, of course, is religious exception. And so in our church, the Native American Indigenous Church, we actually have a vaccine exception rule as a religious doctrine that is practiced by Native Americans, because we believe not that all vaccines are bad. We're not Luddites. What we say is that if you're going to have something artificial, chemical, dangerous put into your body, you have a right to make the decision whether that is true or not. So if a vaccine has mercury in it, you have a right to say, you know what, I'm not against the vaccination, but I'm against you putting mercury in my body without my permission. If the vaccine has animal-derived DNA and RNA from rats and mice and dogs and horses and sheep, you have a right to say, I'm not against the vaccinations, but I'm against putting rat DNA or spider DNA or horse DNA in my body. I have a right. I believe in the sacred space of my physical body, and that I have a right to say what goes inside of it. I have a right to say what I eat. I have a right to say what you're going to put in me. And if you won't tell me what's in that vaccination, then I'm not going to accept it. And you can do this on religious grounds, but you'd have to be a member of our church at NAIC. That's the website is somaveda.com, SOMAVEDA.com. So you could look into that. If you're a client of a NAIC practitioner or Somaveda practitioner, you would join the church at the APM level. Okay. All right. Thanks, Leah. You could join at the APM level. So the last thing I'm going to say is this. I have an online platform It's called Learn Thai Yoga. So easy to remember. Learn Thai Yoga. It's at learnthaiyoga.teachable.com. There's a course there called Jumpstart Your Healing Practice and Improve Your Income. It's mostly targeted toward yoga therapists and Thai yoga practitioners to help them build and expand and to be more knowledgeable in their practice. I recommend it to all the students. However, there are 2 courses there. One is Infection Strategies for Yoga Therapists, and the other is Novel Virus and Corona Solutions and Solutions for Corona. Those 2 courses have about, right now, this minute, between them, I think it's 50 lessons, okay? More than 50 videos, PDFs, scientific research, exhaustive bibliographies. But if you want to get into the science of corona, then you do the Novel Virus course, and it's up to date as of yesterday. So I've been adding updates almost daily for the last 6 weeks. There are videos, there are bibliographies, there are research papers and PDFs that you can read for yourself. I'll give you one example. You might have heard a rumor that the CDC was ordering doctors and hospitals to inflate the numbers of corona patients. In other words, to make the numbers much higher than they actually are. You might have heard a rumor of that. Not a rumor. I actually have a copy of the HHS CDC memo that was sent to every hospital and every licensed medical doctor in the United States 2 weeks ago, ordering them to consider all deaths as corona related until further notice. And so I'll give you an example. A friend of mine, this is really sad. It's really sad, but it illustrates a point. A friend of mine, actual associate of mine, his brother's son, his nephew, committed suicide last week. He's had a drug problem, addiction with heroin and other drugs for 20 years. In and out of institutions, in and out of rehab for 20 years. Okay? Last week, he overdosed, accidentally overdosed, and died of a heroin overdose. The cause of death on his death certificate was COVID-19. Okay? There's no evidence that he had corona or anything like it. He was not tested for corona. He had no one cataloged a list of symptoms. The reason he was listed as COVID-19 on the death certificate is because of when he died, not how. I have an actual copy in the Novel Corona course of that memo. You can read it for yourself. Read it, because that will explain a lot to you. You'll understand why the numbers are so high. And again, why are the numbers high? They're inflated to cause fear. Fear to cause compliance. And for you sci-fi buffs out there, read Frank Herbert, Dune trilogy, Dune Messiah. Okay, I know it's science fiction, Frank Herbert. A lot of truth bombs in science fiction. Read Dune, and there's a character, they're called the Mentats in the Dune trilogy. Dune is about a messiah who has a vision. But there's these characters called Mentats. And the thing that Mentats are famous for saying is they're logical and they're rational and they're highly evolved mentally. And their saying is, fear is the mind killer. That the greatest ability that they have to be more logical, to be more rational, to be more mentally agile and skillful than ordinary people around them is that they do not submit to fear. Fear is the mind killer. I actually believe that that's it. As soon as you're afraid, you stop thinking. Especially if that fear is irrational. And if a bear is chasing you and it's going to eat you, by all means, be fear. Have fear. If a bear is chasing you, by all means, you run away, scream, wave your arms. Yes, do. But if somebody says there's a bear chasing you and you look behind you, They say, there's a bear chasing you, run away. And you look behind you and there's no bear. It would be inappropriate to be overcome with fear. So right now that bear is Corona. And yes, there are real bears in the woods. Yes, that's a real thing. Yes, occasionally bears eat people. It's sad, but it's a real thing. It actually happens. Okay, but what is your real risk right now today of being eaten by a bear? In my opinion, small. So if Corona, 99% of people who have it don't even know they have it. And of the 1% that do have it, they have a severe outcome. It's because they have untreated underlying chronic health conditions like cancer, diabetes, heart disease, Parkinson's, Lyme disease. It's a long list, by the way. Then those are the people we need to worry about. And what do we do to worry about? We don't just worry about them, we pray for them, number one, because prayer is probably your overall number one most effective tool right now. Number two is we get in their face and we get critically helpful in our strong recommendations for them to get their life in order and get their holistic health house in ship shape. Let's do some detox. Let's do some dense nutrition. Let's change what we eat. You know what? I don't care. Julie and I have been going to our local CSA, Beasley Farms, and we don't wear a mask. And Beasley Farm, if we went there today, it would be packed with people looking for fresh food medicine. Packed with people today looking for fresh food medicine. Find your CSA and support them because the farmers are having a hard time. Okay? But that's a strategy. I don't know what else to say. There's so much. We could talk for hours. Maybe we'll try and do a catch up in another week or so. But up to you. Okay? So learn Thai Yoga, learnthaiyoga.teachable.com. Sign up for the Jumpstart program. It's really inexpensive. Forget if you're not interested in practice building or working on yourself, just ignore the 40 other classes and go just to the infection and the novel corona class and just do those classes. And that will blow your mind and yet at the same time give you power because knowledge is power. And right now, most people are feeling powerless. You're concerned with respiratory illness? Practice yoga. Practice pranayama. Learn at least one pranayama asana that you can do. Learn the mother's breath. Learn one thing. Learn one iteration of Ujjayi breathing. Learn just one and just practice that, and everything else you're doing, that pranayama, that prana will empower the vitamin C. It will unlock the secrets of the vitamin D and the vitamin K production. There are actually correlations with oxygen perfusion and oxygen metabolism with vitamin D and vitamin C and with zinc. And how do we intentionally, if you want to say, facilitate that enhanced oxygenation metabolism? And by the way, virus cannot sustain itself in an oxygenated environment. All viruses, pathogenic, are anorexic, apoxic. They don't like oxygen environment. All right, that's number one. So yoga, and also good for your state of mind. In other words, run down the whole list of what you're dealing with, and yoga will actually handle pretty much all of those if you care to practice. No excuse not to. Number two, okay, if fear is part of your psychological makeup, I'm going to tell you what I've told students about fear for a long time. Learn a martial art. Learn how to protect yourself. What do you think martial arts are for? Our traditional school in India had a martial arts tradition that was part of it called Kalari Payat. Our traditional healing arts school in Thailand had a martial art that was always part of it called Krabi Kraban and Moiburan. Okay, schools like ours in Japan okay? Zen schools of traditional medicine had martial arts called Budo, okay? Every ancient healing tradition had a martial art that was associated with it. Native American systems didn't have martial arts in the same way by name, okay? But every person was expected to learn how to live and survive in dangerous environments. So that is also a practice of martial arts.
Questions for us before we sign off? Or Maddie and I? No? Okay. So I am just gonna like pitch it one more time, especially for those of you that have already taken the class or you are a part of the Somaveda community in some way. Spread the word of our Reclaim Your Health class. Please, with the
What
utmost.
do you mean, Alex? What do you mean by the average Joe? Like what? Like who is this class for?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's not just for the average Joe, seeing as those of you that are showing up, but who we want to serve, who are especially interested in serving, are the individuals that recognize there's something wrong, but don't know what to do with it. Don't know what to do with that awareness, are a little overwhelmed with all of the information out there, want to have a safe space to synthesize it, want to have a safe space to discuss it, recognize that it's far more than just taking vitamin C, it's far more than just doing breath work. There's a holistic embodiment of the process, and through discernment and through application, you learn what is suitable for your unique constitution and incarnation. And so that's who we're looking for, that the person who's like on the threshold of taking in that information. They're like, they know, but they're not so sure how or why.
Yeah. And then for the people who, right, for people who are kind of new to this realm in general, there's a lot. There's a lot of information. We talk about supplements. We talk about basic nutrition for your body type, seasonal eating according to Ayurvedic principles. We go in and talk about toxicity and GMOs and how to support detoxification naturally through certain foods and things like that. For people who already have that sort of foundational level knowledge, some of the people in this call right now already had that information and took the class and found value in the class, because like Alex said, it's about how do we integrate that wisdom? How do we actually meet our emotional resistance and learn how to, in the real world, apply what we already know. So we introduce tools like the emotional freedom technique and pranayama and nervous system regulation techniques to learn how to actually apply and integrate what we already know, what is really kind of basic information available to all of us on the internet, but providing a framework, a container, a community, and some more sophisticated tools to learn how to implement that in our lives.
Thank you.
I do have a quick question about that, because he was talking about becoming a member of the church, and I know that we had to sign something at the beginning of the class that I feel like we were agreeing to some of that, and I don't know if that actually means that we could then use that religious exemption.
It's a good question.
We do get to some kind of forced situation with vaccinations.
Yeah, right. So you did sign the agreement participant membership level.
Okay.
You can participate in what we offer and teach through the American Indigenous Church. I don't know what that, Alex, do you? I mean, if that also then entitles you to, like, what sort of privileges or rights that entitles you to as a participant level member. I'm not sure, but we could follow up with him for that question and get back to you.
Yeah, I'd like to know that as well.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I need to renew or, I'd like to know at what level I need to
Okay.
commit to get all that.
What level gives access to religious exemption? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a great question to clarify, because I don't know the answer at this time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All
Here's
right.
the willow you were wondering about, by the way.
Hello. That's fun. Okay, thank you guys so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for receiving. Thank you for contributing. And I look forward to seeing you when I see you.
Mhm.
Thank you guys for everything. It was so wonderful.
So good to see you, Dina.
Yeah.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Mwah.
Bye.
Namaste.